Hi, everybody. Hi again. Welcome to this second session of the closing day of Dreaming the New Earth. As of the stars, so of the earth. This week, we've been in conversation with amazing wisdom keepers and guardians of the ancient truths about where we come from, where we're heading as a collective. And today has been a special day already so far with Bushman Pete, and there are another couple of offerings after this one as well. And today, I, in this session, am very pleased and honored to introduce you to Jocelyn Starfeather. I'll introduce her with her bio and then explain what she is offering us today, which is an amazing presentation. Jocelyn Starfeather is a visibility and thought leadership coach for visionary entrepreneurs. She's a spiritual alchemist, astrologer, and founder of Sacred Planet. She shares shamanic and ancient wisdom to guide courageous seekers in co-creating a revolutionary new world in alignment with Mother Earth and the vast intelligence to the cosmos. After a successful 15-year corporate career working in finance for major multinational companies, Jocelyn was thrust into a deep spiritual awakening. It was that awakening that turned her life upside down and from which she emerged with a powerful understanding of how to use her intuition and healing abilities, aspects of herself that she'd never had access to before. She dove deeply into earth-based and shamanic practices, and she has studied alongside elders and wisdom keepers ever since. She has extensively studied ancient civilizations, especially cultures where the goddess held a strong presence, and she has spent profound and life-changing time in the ancient temples and pyramids of Egypt. Jocelyn blends alchemy, astrology, hermeticism, ancient and indigenous wisdom, and a magical shamanic perspective to coach and guide visionary entrepreneurs, revolutionaries, and change makers all around the world. And with much gratitude to Jocelyn for this offering, I'll hand it over to her for her presentation, which is titled Ancient Egypt and the Great 26,000-Year Precessional Cycles, where she'll be sharing about what these great 26,000-year precessional cycles are and how this informs us about our origins and how this is all connected with ancient Egypt and the potent times that we are living in now, these potent times of awakening. And also how that, what powerful guidance is available to us now from these teachings. So over to you, Jocelyn. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I am delighted to be here as a part of this beautiful event, Dreaming the New Earth. I want to say thank you to Clara. Thank you so much, Clara, for including me. And thank you so much for creating this beautiful, beautiful gathering. And I am Jocelyn Starfeather, and I am the founder of Sacred Planet and a visibility coach for visionary entrepreneurs, as well as a sacred travel guide. And I am so excited to share this presentation with you today. This presentation is going to be about ancient Egypt and the great 26,000-year precessional cycles, which they knew about not only in ancient Egypt, but in many, many, many different ancient cultures. So this is connecting in with what the ancient Mayans knew and the Mayan long count calendar. This is connecting in with what the ancient yogic traditions share about the Yuga cycles. This is connecting in with the ancient Peruvian and Incan and pre-Incan cultures and the Pachacutis, the vast cycles of time, as they called them. And so this happens all around the planet, where the ancient people were in touch with these very, very long cycles of time, 26,000-year cycles, in fact. To be exact, it's 25,920 years. So I'll show you more about that. And it's just so fascinating. We have in the Sumerian texts, as well as in the ancient Egyptian texts, the documented king's lists that go back all the way back to 36,000 years ago, which would be about 1.5 of these cycles. So truly fascinating. Let's dive in and I'll show you more about all of this. So here are some slides to help illustrate it. And I love including the slides because, especially when we're talking about Egypt, when you see the imagery, it just allows you to receive it at a much deeper level, at a really profound level that goes beyond the thinking mind and goes beyond whatever words I might put to it. So you can really take it in. Now, I just want to explain this concept, first of all, of the precession of the equinoxes, which are the great 26,000 year cycles. And I want to say a little bit more about what we mean by this. Now, this is actually an astronomical and a scientific measurement of time. And we see over time that these great, great ages seem to rule chaos and order over the vast cycles of time. So most ancient civilizations had knowledge of what they called the Great Year or the Long Count calendar. And it's truly incredible that the ancient people noticed this because to track something that takes 26,000 years to go around one time, that is just over so many generations that this had to be tracked. And even if we break this down into smaller spans of time, the ancients would have noticed that each star of the fixed stars in the sky, each fixed star moves 1 degree every 72 years in this great cycle. So 72 years, that's approximately one human lifetime. So we know that they were tracking these cycles over many generations, many human lifetimes to really connect in with these cycles. So they were tracking this based on the movement of the stars, particularly the North Star, because approximately every 2,000 years, we have a different North Star that lines up. I have another chart to show you that in a little bit. They were also tracking this based on the change in where the sun would rise on the spring equinox. Now, this is in the northern hemisphere. So this is based on where the sun rises in the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, or you could also track it by where the sun rises in the autumn equinox in the southern hemisphere. But essentially, over time, the sun rises in different constellations. Every 2,100 years, the sun will be rising in another zodiac sign. So each zodiacal age lasts approximately 2,100 years. And we go through 12 ages of the 12 zodiac signs that are the 12 main constellations in our sky. So the full extent of this cycle takes an incredible 26,000 years to complete. When we're speaking about North Stars, it's important to note that our North Star today is Polaris. But 5,000 years ago, when we have a lot of the documents and the texts from ancient Egypt and other ancient cultures, the North Star was Thuban. And that star is in the constellation of Draco. So again, they were tracking this over vast periods of time. Today, we call this phenomenon the precession of the equinoxes. Now, there are different theories about why this happens, which is quite fascinating. So this is the old theory of precession. And this is what it says in the elementary school science books, and it says this on Wikipedia. And it explains it, as you can see in this diagram. We have the 12 zodiac signs. And we have the sun rising in a different zodiac sign. The vernal equinoctial point is where the sun is rising at any given point in time in the northern hemisphere. And this is showing where it's rising right now. At this point in time, if we track the constellation that the sun is in when it rises on the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, it's right on the line between the Pisces constellation and the Aquarius constellation. Now, this is scientifically the explanation for why we say we're moving into the age of Aquarius. It's because the sun now is going to be rising in alignment with the constellation of Aquarius on the spring equinox going forward for the next 2,100 years. And so when we look at this overall 12 signs, this takes 25,920 years for the sun to move through every zodiac sign and come back to its original point. at the same time, we have the Earth here. The Earth is tilted on her axis. Okay. And so the old theory of precession is that there is a wobble in the Earth's axis as it spins in space, and that as it wobbles, we are pointing at different North Stars over time. The interesting thing is there doesn't actually seem to be a wobble, and more recent scientific research has shown we don't have any actual evidence of a wobble. So there's a new theory of precession that now has been recently introduced. Taking a drink of my water here. Okay. So this theory is most likely far more accurate. And this theory is based on the concept of the sun as a binary star. So in the background of this slide, we have something to illustrate that. Here would be our sun, this beautiful yellow star. Here's another star. It could be Sirius. That's one of the theories. Sirius is a beautiful blue star, and these two stars are in an orbit where they are both pulling on each other's gravitational fields, and they are essentially both orbiting around one another. Now, wherever our sun goes, our entire solar system goes. So if the sun is orbiting around another star, then we are all of us, all the planets, from Mercury all the way to Pluto and the asteroid belt and the Earth, all of us, we are orbiting around that other star. So this is very interesting. And as more and more evidence becomes clear that there's not actually a wobble, but instead that the precession of the equinoxes happens because we are moving through vast, vast segments of the Milky Way galaxy. So the changes in fixed stars that we see over the vast eons, and as I mentioned, they change, the stars move 1 degree every 72 years, happens because we are moving through different parts of the universe. So we're, flying through this area of the galaxy, and then for the next 2,000 years, we're flying through that area of the galaxy, and then we come around this way, right? So vast, I'm doing this with my arm, but it's just vast portions of space. So our view looking out from the Earth changes over time. Now, if we take this a bit further, it's really fascinating to think about it from a consciousness perspective, because we see that there are these waves over time, these shifts and changes in our consciousness and major Earth events where we seem to have rises and falls of consciousness. We seem to have times that are very cataclysmic and times that are very calm. And so this could actually be impacted by which part of the universe or which part of the galaxy we are moving through. So that maybe this side of the galaxy over here is very calm and stabilizing energies, and this part of the galaxy over here is very catalyzing and wakes us up and helps us to remember who we really are. And that's where we're moving through right now. So this creates the rise and fall of civilizations, changes in consciousness over time, and cycles of cataclysm and calm on our planet. Now, we do know scientifically that 80% of the stars in our galaxy are binary stars, so it is very likely that this theory is accurate. Another piece of evidence for this theory is that, and this is really fascinating too, the color of the star Sirius has been documented to change over time. We have writings from the ancient Greeks, this is about 2,000 or 2,500 years ago, that are clearly talking about the star Sirius, but they are describing it as a red star. If you look at the star Sirius today, you will see that it is quite clearly blue. It's not red at all. And so what scientists have found is that when we are moving toward the star Sirius, when we're getting closer to it, it appears blue to us. When we are moving away from that star, it appears red. So this would make a lot of sense if we're in a continual cycle with this star, right? And maybe every 2,000 years or so, it changes from red to blue, and then another 2,000 years back to red as we're moving toward it and away from it in these great cycles. Here's another chart showing the precession of the equinoxes and these great ages of humanity, which is Where is the sun rising as we move through time? Just to give you another view of it and help it become clearer in your perception of how this is working. So if we look, we are here. This chart was made in 2022, but basically this is right where we are, as we saw in that other chart, on the edge between the Pisces constellation and the Aquarius constellation. This is where the sun is rising on the vernal equinox in the northern hemisphere right now. And if we go back in the cycles, right around here, around 4,000 BC is the beginning of recorded history, beginning of the age of Taurus. Before that, we don't have a lot of records. We do know that around here, the change from the age of Virgo into the age of Leo, about 10,800 BC or 12,800 years ago, was the end of the last ice age. Now, this was also the time that the Great Flood occurred. We have a lot of geological evidence for this flood now. We've known for a long time that the flood is written about in the Sumerian text, the Egyptian text, texts from all around the world. It's written in the Bible as well, that there was this great flood that the waters rose, insurmountable levels, and, very few survived. And we have this geological evidence now showing, there's so much more I could say about this, but basically I'm just going to say showing that it happened around this time at the beginning of the age of Leo, about 12,800 to 12,500 years ago. And so interestingly, the age of Cancer, which was the next stage, so we had 2,100 years here that were marked by this very significant cataclysmic time. Then the sun began to rise in the constellation of Cancer around 8650 BC, or 10,650 years ago. And this is the time that is marked in the temple of Dendera in Egypt as Zep Tepi, the beginning time. And I'm going to take you on a little journey through the temples in Egypt today to show you more about that beginning time, Zep Tepi, when the floodwaters began to recede and people emerged and began building up their cultures and their civilizations once again. Something that's really interesting is that we are now, in recent years, archaeologists have been uncovering these megalithic structures and circular enclosures in Turkey. So for example, Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, there was a new one discovered recently. I don't know the name off the top of my head that's even more ancient than those. But these structures were built during the age of Leo. Now, how did they do that, right? They were emerging from the flood and building these incredible structures. We also have increasing evidence from amazing researchers, scientists, anthropologists, such as Robert Schoch, Robert Bauval, Graham Hancock, pointing to the fact that the pyramids were quite likely built during the end of the age of Leo. Now, this indicates that there was a great civilization before the flood, and that those who survived the flood still held and carried forward the incredible technologies that that earlier civilization had. We today call that civilization Atlantis or Lemuria. We don't know what the ancient people called it, but these are the names we have for it today. There is mounting evidence that there was a very high, probably a centralized civilization before the Great Flood. And so these incredible structures that we see, like the pyramids and the Sphinx at Giza, like Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe in Turkey, that were constructed at the end of the age of Leo, were constructed by those who were working to rebuild their great civilizations immediately after the flood. And then it seems we had a fall in consciousness gradually over time, right? And modern history books will tell you, well, we were just simple hunters and gatherers all that time until, about 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago. And we don't have evidence of what came before that time. but perhaps we do, and we're just not accurately dating it because carbon dating does not date stone. Carbon dating is much more complex. So I'm not going to go into that either. But what I want to say from this chart is we are right now at the opposite point on the great precessional cycle from that end of the last ice age and time of the great flood. That was the beginning of the age of Leo. We are now entering into the beginning of the age of Aquarius. And so I'm going to show you in some of the temples how it is written and how it is shown to us that the ancient people were very, very aware that this time we're living in now is an extremely important time on our planet. And they wanted to let us know that. And they encoded it in their temples, especially the Temple of Dendera in Egypt, the Temple of Edfu. And so this is going back to our origins. This is going back to the time where we emerged from the floodwaters, rebuilt our civilizations, and left markers, left information, left texts and knowledge for those of us alive now in the 21st century AD, right, to rediscover and to bring back our power and to bring back our knowledge. So let's dive into that. I'll just pause here quickly to say this is a really beautiful chart. This is from earthsky.org of the changing North Stars over the ages. All right, so if we go back to 10,000 years ago, this is the part of the night sky that the north of the Earth was pointing to. We come around this way, we can see that at this point about 5,000 years ago, Thuban in this constellation of Draco was the North Star. And right now, Polaris, which is the end of the tail of the Little Dipper, is our North Star. And going forward, we will have other changing North Stars over time. And every 26,000 years, we come back to the original North Star. So as I have mentioned already, we have ancient prophecies from around the world pointing to these great 26,000 year cycles and creating complex calendars and tracking systems, Stonehenge being one of those, right? Temples around the world, like the Temple of the Serpent at Chichen Itza being one of them, that mark the solstices, they mark the equinoxes, and they also mark the great year cycles. And so they went to a lot of trouble to create these, right? They created these massive stone temples or stone circles like Stonehenge, where the stones were incredibly heavy, hundreds of tons of weight, and they were carried from hundreds of miles away. How did they do that? Why did they do that? Why were they so motivated? Or we also have records that were carved in extensive texts, carved in stone, saved in papyrus over many thousands of years. So why did the ancient people go to such immense effort to leave these records of the great ages? Was it to remind us of our origins? Was it to remind us of those great cycles? So the Sphinx's eternal gaze is fixed upon the eastern horizon. I took this picture when I was in Egypt in 2021, and I happened to be right here by the Sphinx at the time that the sun was rising. And the pyramids, as you can see, began to glow with the sunrise. It was so powerful. And this is a moment that has happened for probably every morning for over 10,000 years. This view right here, probably without the umbrella for most of that time, right? How incredible. What is the Sphinx watching for? What is the Sphinx telling us? So the Sphinx and the pyramids at Giza were likely constructed during the age of Leo, just after the Great Flood. The Sphinx's head was not originally a human pharaoh head. It's very clear because if you look at the Sphinx, I wonder if you can see it a bit in this image. See how you can tell that this head is way too small for the body? Many scientists have looked into this over many, many years. So, what was it before? We don't know, but it was probably a lion because the rest of the body is a lion. Other theories are it could have been a hawk head, it could have been an Anubis head, maybe. But what I believe and what many other researchers have come to in their conclusions is that this was representing the constellation Leo the Lion, and it was gazing at the constellation Leo the Lion when the sun was rising in that constellation on the spring equinox. There are other theories saying maybe it was even 26,000 years before that in the previous age of Leo. Possibly. But these structures are incredibly, incredibly ancient. This was a beautiful sunset photo that I took at Giza, where it seemed that the sun was like an eye in the sky. Isn't that just so, so amazing? Now, I want to take you on a tour through a few of the temples that have these astrological and astronomical markers within them. So you can see some of the artistry and the precision with which these cycles were tracked. Now, something that's really interesting in the Egyptian cycles are the Egyptian hieroglyphs and the texts and the way that the texts are displayed inside of the temples is they were showing cycles inside of cycles inside of cycles. So they were aware of the daily cycle, the rising and setting of the sun. They were aware of the 28.5-day lunar cycles and the waxing and waning of the moon. They were aware of the yearly cycles. They were aware of the 26,000-year cycles. And so they would encapsulate different levels of cycles in one hieroglyphic panel, which is just incredible. So that everything is very multidimensional, the way that the hieroglyphs are crafted. Now, this is a view from outside of Esna Temple. We have just one building remaining of Esna Temple, and this is it, and it has incredible astrological ceilings. Now, this temple was built, I believe it was around 100 BC or so. It was around, the end of the Egyptian dynasties. So what we see here, we have to keep in mind, has been a bit modified by the Roman and the Greek interpretations. However, I believe that there are certain things on this ceiling that really carry the original ancient perception of the astrology and the astronomy. The other thing to keep in mind about all of the Egyptian temples is this temple was built on top of an older one, and that one was built on top of an older one before it. And the wisdom from the furthest ancient temples were carried forward into the new ones that were built. The ancient Egyptians would tear down and rebuild their temples approximately every 2,100 years because it was very important to them to be aligned, to have their temples precisely aligned with particular stars and constellations. And they knew that approximately every 2,100 years, the North Star changes, the zodiac sign, that the sun is rising and changes. And so they would rebuild their temples to come back into alignment with the current cycle. So even the temple itself is representative of these great cycles. But what I want you to know is the wisdom that they have encoded in these hieroglyphs is pulled forward. It is not just representative of what they knew in 100 BC, for example. It is representative of what they knew in the temple before that and the temple before that they brought forward into the new one. Now, these incredible hieroglyphs show the waxing and waning of the moon. So we start with the new moon here. It's dark. It's, barely see it. And here we have, as the moon waxes, the new moon is what I meant to say. I think that's what I said there. As the moon is waxing, we begin to see this eye opening, the eye of Ra opening. And the full moon is when the eye is at its greatest opening. Okay. Now, this row we're reading left to right because you always read toward the faces. So we're reading toward this face, toward all of their faces. Then we come down here and we're going to read right to left because we're reading it toward their faces here. So here we have the beginning of the waning moon, and it's waning and the eye is closing more and more. And we see the thin crescent, and then it goes back to the new moon. So they were tracking these cycles, they were recording them. And many of the images, like this one, are illustrating the 36 Egyptian deacons. So the way that the Egyptians saw the sky was not so much in the 12 zodiac signs that we have today, although they did recognize those, but they actually broke the sky down into smaller segments of 10 degrees each. So the whole sky is 360 degrees. When you break that down into 10 degrees each, you get 36 sections instead of 12. So they had 36 deacons, and they would very closely track which stars were rising, which deacons were rising with the sun on a particular day, which deacons were at the apex of the sky on a particular day. They would track the deacons, and the stars included in the deacons created the energy of that deacon. And they would decide based on that activity and those cycles when to hold their rituals and ceremonies, when to put the new pharaoh into their rulership, when to do the marriages and the celebrations, when to do the burials, etc. So this image here shows deacons 30 and 31, illustrated by a mummy amidst the stars. See this star, this mummy is surrounded by 7 stars above and 14 stars below, and the Wadjet eyes, the eye of Horus and the eye of Ra, inside of a bark or a boat. On the top right of this panel, we have the constellation Orion here. We see him in Dendera as well, and the star Sirius right here. And their names are written, so we know clearly what these are, okay? Their names are written in the hieroglyphs. On the bottom right, we have the Big Dipper, or the Ursa Majora constellation, which is this like great foreleg of or hind leg of a bull. So they were tracking all of this. Now, this is a really interesting panel at Edfu that I believe shows some of the far ancient understanding of reality. Just look at all these serpents. I love this. It's so beautiful. And it's representing the serpentine energies of the life force and the forces of nature at the original time of creation. Just incredibly beautiful. And you can see the precision that all of this was carved with. The ceiling at Esna, if I said Edfu, I meant Esna. This is Esna. The ceiling at Esna was covered with soot until very recently. Just within the last couple of years, they have cleared the soot from the ceiling, revealing these incredible astronomical and astrological hieroglyphs. Now let's go to Dendera. This is the temple of Hathor, dedicated to Hathor, the Great Mother. And truly, the secrets of all time and space are held here. This, you see Orion, as we saw him just a couple slides ago at Esna. This is Orion, and this is Osiris, for they are one and the same. Osiris is the great god or Neter of ancient Egypt, who is the king of the Duat. Now, the Duat is the underworld in our words, but the Duat was not under in ancient Egypt. The Duat was this place in the sky where the souls go to. So here is Orion, Osiris, and here is Sirius, the star Sirius right here in her sacred cow form. Now this relates back to the original perception of the great goddess, the great mother, when she was one version that included what today we might call the 3 goddesses of Isis, Hathor and Nut. This was her in her original form, her original sacred cow form. And here is the son of Isis and Osiris. This is Horus. And this is the beginning time. This is representing Zep Tepi, moving out of the age of Leo and into the age of Cancer, the original time of creation when the people emerged from the receding floodwaters and could build their civilization once again. So this is the new beginning being depicted on the ceiling of Dendera. We see here, this is really important. This is the primordial serpent rising out of the primeval waters in a lotus bark at the very beginning of this new beginning. And this serpent allows the life force energy for everything else that you see here and everything else on the ceiling of Dendera to occur. It all begins here with this life force of creation rising out of the floodwaters. Now here is Newt. This is a beautiful ceiling in this special chapel of Newt in Dendera Temple. Now remember I said that originally Hathor, Newt, and Isis were all one, and over time they became differentiated and perceived as these three different goddesses, but originally they were one and the same. So here is Newt. She is the Milky Way. She arches her body across the entire sky. When we look up at night in a dark sky area and see the Milky Way, we are seeing her sweeping her body across the sky. So she, every evening at dusk, eats the sun. She takes the sun in, it travels through her body all night. And in the morning, at the dawn, she births the sun anew from her womb. And you can see the light, all of the light and the life force streaming down. And what is in that life force? It is Hathor. Now, Hathor and Newt are one and the same, and they are shown here as this principle of creation itself, as the sun is born anew from the womb of the Great Mother. Now, this represents not only the day cycle, but this represents also Zep Tepi, the beginning time when humanity was born anew, and all of the other cycles in between those two. Here is another image of that primeval life force rising out of the primordial waters of creation on the lotus bark. This is an image from the crypts, which are these tunnels and hallways beneath the temple of Dendera. Maybe they were part of the older temple, or maybe they were put beneath the temple because it was a secret initiate area. But when we go to Dendera Temple, we can visit the crypts, we can climb through the tunnels and find these incredible hieroglyphs that hold the secrets to all creation. Here's another image from the crypts. You can see how dark it is down there. We have the phone light shining on here so you could see it. This is one of these images that, you know, if you find this online, they'll say it's a light bulb. The Egyptians knew how to make light bulbs, and they didn't need light bulbs. They were far more advanced than that, actually. And this is not a light bulb. This is showing the process of establishing and holding harmony and balance so that life can emerge once again at Zep Tepi, the beginning time. So that story is told in so many different ways where life emerges and we start anew. But you can see here, this is the same serpent rising from the lotus flower, which grows in the waters. And we have these different people and actors working together to hold that life force up, to create the harmonic balance. See this balance point where these two are holding their hands together, right? This is the spine of Osiris, the Jed pillar. And we have other figures here helping to hold that balance up so that life can be supported. This is like what's happening behind the scenes in the cosmos as life was emerging on Earth once again. Now on the ceilings of Dendera, we can find each of the zodiac signs. So here is the sign of Leo, the lion. He's on a bark. He's on a serpent bark, actually. So this is representing the great age of Leo. It's also representing the time when The sun moves through the Leo constellation in the sky every year between July and August, and many other cycles. Here are the zodiac signs and the great ages of Virgo. So this is Virgo holding the shaft of wheat or grain right here. Similar to how we see Demeter depicted in the Greek mythology. And here is Libra, the scales. Okay. And we can see the scales here. Now remember, this version was heavily influenced by the Greek culture, but then it still holds pieces of the original ancient Egyptian. So we find the balance between the two. And here is Scorpio, the scorpion right here. And here is Sagittarius with his bow and arrow and an interesting scorpionic tail coming off of that horse. So you can see how these zodiac signs and the great ages are depicted on the ceiling of Dendera. Here's a depiction of the phases of the waxing moon. Each of these beings representing one day in the moon cycle, and there are 14 of them. And this is going from the new moon, and we have each of their names written here, so we know who they are, leading up to the full moon, the beautiful full moon that is shown as the mirror, which is very much associated with Hathor, the beautiful great goddess Hathor. And Thoth or Jehuti is here honoring the full moon at its fullest waxing. So you can see how in these ceilings, the cycles are shown from every possible angle, the small cycles, the larger cycles, the even larger cycles. And they tell a story, and the story that they tell is informing us today that the time is now. That is an incredible time to be alive when these cycles are coalescing and convening once again so that we can raise our consciousness once again. And if we can think of this on the larger astronomical level, that we are rotating around this other star, right? Possibly the star Sirius. We are in this beautiful gravitational interplay with this other star, moving through different areas of the galaxy. And now we are coming back into the area of the galaxy where our consciousness can be raised again, where we can remember all of the power and the knowledge that we have always held, but just forgotten for a little while. And we are coming back into it now. So this is most of what I wanted to share with you. I will stop the share there. I do have more slides, but I don't want it to get too long-winded. I will share with you one piece here, which is my free gift, just so that you have that, and I know that will be linked below the video. This free gift is called Awaken Your Connection with Ancient Egypt. Find your power in the magic of long ago. It's a really powerful video workshop that I created, and you can find it on my website, jocelynstarfeather.com. If you go here and then go to awaken-connection-Egypt, or just click on the link below the video. So I can't wait to share that with you, and I hope you will just absolutely love it. So I want to just say one more thing here in relation to all that I've talked about today. You know, this is about our origins. This is about who we really are, all the knowledge, all the power, all the wisdom that we really do hold. And we see it reflected in the ancient traditions of so many cultures around the world, and including in our indigenous cultures, which are still alive, which are still carrying these cosmologies and these traditions and these ceremonies and rituals today. I recently was traveling in Guatemala, and I was visiting the Mayan lands, which was so powerful, and got to see some ancient Mayan temples, including the incredible site of Tikal. It was just so beautiful. And what was really amazing to experience there in Guatemala is that the original Mayan language is still alive. And even there are 40 different dialects of it as you travel all around Mexico and Guatemala. this language is being spoken. In many of the places we went to, they spoke two languages. The people in the local areas, and this is including like way out in the mountains and hard, off the beaten path kind of areas, hard to get to areas. Um, they spoke Spanish and the ancient Mayan dialect of that region. So, so beautiful. So we needed an interpreter, everywhere we went for those in the group that didn't speak Spanish. Um, to see this language is still alive, to know that this ancient Mayan language has been carried forward for so, so, so many thousands of years was really powerful. And also their rituals, their ceremonies are still alive. We got to experience incredible ancient Mayan fire ceremonies led by the holders of this wisdom as it's been passed down through so many generations. And we got to experience the magic of cacao and cacao ceremonies held in the traditional Mayan way. So it's just so powerful to know that this wisdom is here with us. It is reawakening, it is resurging up within our hearts, within our understandings of reality. And something that's so important to know in all of these ancient cultures, as we study them, we find that the true technology is life itself. The true technology. And this is so important to know because we're being faced with a lot of very, very interesting technologies these days, AI, all kinds of different ways to use the computing skills, all kinds of different vehicles that we can travel in. And we want to keep in mind that as the ancient and indigenous people have always known, and as you see reflected in all of those images of serpents representing the life force, representing the Kundalini energy, this life force that surges up and spirals within ourselves, they knew, and we know in our hearts still today, that life is the highest technology, life itself. No matter how incredible of a computer they create, it's not going to be able to do more amazing things than a bird flying and creating its nest and having its babies. It's not going to be able to do more incredible things than our own human heart and mind. And so we just want to keep that in mind, right? We are remembering our ancient technologies. We're remembering them gradually. We're getting there, but we are. And when we get fully in touch with the technologies that we actually carry in our body, that the earth actually carries in her body, that every plant and every animal carries, when we really come back into full remembrance of all that we can do, the capabilities, the capacities, the power that we have with this true life technology, we're not going to need all those crazy invented technologies anymore. So I think that's one really important thing we can take away, from all of this. But in any case, we are living in this incredible time to be alive. We are living in this time that was pointed to by ancient prophecies from all around the world. You've seen a little bit of it from the Egyptian point of view, but I encourage you to research more about this as it calls to you. Maybe look up and read about the Mayan calendar, maybe look up and read about the Vedic Yuga cycles, the Sumerian and Egyptian kings list, and learn more and see what really moves you. So with that, I will close this call. Thank you so much to all who are attending this beautiful event, Dreaming the New Earth. Thank you once again to Clara for creating this, making it happen. It's been such a beautiful, beautiful gathering. And I'm sending so much love to all of you. Many, many blessings, New Year's blessings. May your 2025 be filled with magic and inspiration. So much love to all of you. Bye for now, and I'll see you again soon.